Good morning. Good morning. My name is Jerry Morgan. I own Code Blue Computing right here in Denver, and we provide cybersecurity services and IT support services for the region. And if you're joining me this morning on our event page, you are here to learn about the FTC Safeguards Rule and the changes that are in place for 2023 and the changes that need to be completed for your business by June of this year. So if you join this webinar expecting a boring slide deck and someone to sell you a bunch of stuff, you've got the wrong girl. You've got the wrong girl. I've spent the last few months chatting with a lot of companies that are affected by the changes to this rule. And so really today, we're just going to have a conversation, right? We're just going to be chatting about what the changes mean for your business. What are some things that you need to do? And if you've got questions related to that, you can pop them in the chat today. Or you can reach out to me after the fact. So let's just chat a little bit about the Safeguards Rule and what it means. The Safeguards Rule has been in place forever. I think it was originally put into place in 2003. And really what happened in 2021 is there were some needed changes made to that. Technology has moved in a significant manner since then. And what they found was a lot of businesses were kind of creating their own way within that Safeguards Rule. And so they put some specific pieces into place that businesses need to adhere to. And one of the significant changes that they made last year is they added some business types that classify as financial institutions that fall under this rule. CPAs, absolutely. Enrolled agents, accounting firms, wealth management, real estate appraisers, auto dealerships. There's a bunch of businesses that we don't necessarily think of as financial institutions, but they fall under the rule. And they fall under the rule by virtue of what you do. You have a lot of customer information, specifically as it relates to accounting firms. You definitely have the mother lode of information that's valuable to cyber attackers, right? You've got names, you've got social security numbers, you've got bank accounts. You have everything that folks need to wreak a lot of havoc. And that's why we found since the pandemic, attacks on CPA and accounting firms have gone up 300%, right? So that's one of the reasons why we've got this updated FTC Safeguards Rule. So really, let's dive into it a little bit. Okay, let's talk about specifically what you're going to have to get into place for your accounting firm to be in compliance for the rule. Okay, the first thing that you're going to need to do, you've got to get a qualified individual designated as the point person that's going to run the program, right? And that could be somebody internally, or you could identify a outsourced company, an IT cybersecurity type of provider to help manage that program for you. But you've really got to identify who that individual is going to be, because they're going to coordinate a bunch of moving pieces to make sure that you're in compliance. And the other thing that you should remember as you go through this process of getting in compliance for the Safeguards Rule, this is not a checkbox, right? This is not a one and done type of situation. This is going to be assessing where you are, identifying where you need to improve. And this is going to be something that you go through, every 6 months to a year, improving your posturing. So definitely keep that in mind, that this isn't a checkbox. This is something that's going to be ongoing for your organization, right? So you got that designated qualified individual identified. The other thing that you need to get done, you have to actually get a written risk assessment. So we're going to have to identify a company that's going to come in and do a full audit for you and give you a written risk assessment that identifies areas where you've got some holes in your security, where you've got some holes as far as what's required of you as it relates to the safeguards rule. And then this is going to be your roadmap, right? This is going to be your roadmap as far as what you need to get in place. The other thing with the written risk assessment, you're going to be doing these regularly as well. So what you're going to want to do is get that initial risk assessment and then get those regularly scheduled on the calendar, probably a couple times a year, right? So, but that's going to be an important piece of this as you go through the process. The next thing that you're going to want to look at is really identifying the controls that you're going to get into place for your organization. And so when I say controls, what are we talking about? If you have a on-site server, some accounting firms still have that, some don't. But if you've got an on-site server, I mean, it's physical security too. Is that in a room by itself that is locked that nobody else has access to? Physical security, right? But on top of that, it's about additional layers of security as it relates to technology, right? Do you have multi-factor authentication enabled across the board for every single device within your organization, right? That's something you have to have. That's something you have to have in place. Another piece that we run into a lot, specifically when we're working with accounting firms, is encryption. A lot of times when we go through our initial process with companies and we do our scans, we find that there's devices that have a motherload of information regarding your clients that's sitting on laptops unencrypted. That is something that is not in compliance for this safeguard rule, and on top of that is just bad business practice. We had a CPA firm last year that one of the devices had over 10,000 social security numbers. That information in the wrong hands, you're looking at a $500,000 breach for a small CPA firm. So the thing to remember as we go through the safeguard list, yes, these are things you have to be compliant with per the FTC rule, but they are things that you should be doing anyway to protect your organization, to protect your clients, and to protect the business that you've built. So that encryption piece is a huge part of applying those controls. Getting an annual pen test for your organization, that's part of those controls, right? So once you identify what the controls are going to be, right, it makes sense that you're going to validate those controls. And what does that mean? That means that you need to be certain that whoever that you're utilizing as your IT provider, or if you have an in-house IT team, you've got to be sure that the information systems are continuously being monitored, right? That they're being regularly tested. Another part of this that many accounting firms don't have in place currently is that there's regular logs of user activity. So you've got to be sure, if you're using an outsourced IT provider, that they are that they've got 24/7 monitoring of the activities within the organization, right? And if something happens, they're going to be aware because it's being monitored, they're looking at those logs, right? That's going to be able to go directly to the security team to jump on an incident when it happens, or if something does happen, that you're going to be able to go to the logs and see what happened. So that's an important piece that you need to be sure that whoever you're working with has that 24/7 ability to be monitoring your systems, right? The other thing that is really important with monitoring for suspicious activity is you're really looking for um, something that's happening that's out of the ordinary, right? So whether that's an employee that maybe is taking information they shouldn't be taking, or if it's someone that has gained access to a device, but it's really important that there's someone that has eyes on those logs, right? If that makes sense, okay? The other piece is really doing vulnerability testing for your organization, looking at that a couple of times a year. And it's kind of what we're talking about, that we're continuously looking at our security posturing and making changes and adding things as we need to. So it's a moving, constantly a moving, changing thing, if you will. Okay. The other piece that is specific to the safeguards rule that is going to be that's going to be significant to accounting businesses in particular is monitoring your service providers, right? As you ramp up into tax season this year, a lot of organizations are using outsourced team members to help you get through tax season, right? Whether it's accountants, whether it's bookkeepers, whether it's virtual assistants. But now, on top of being responsible for your own security, you've got to make sure that the folks that you're utilizing, that their security is up to snuff as well. So you need to think about, as you are preparing for the safeguards rule, are you going to be the person that is going to be checking on these service providers? Are you going to hire someone else? What's that going to look like? But it's going to be really important to vet those that you are relying on in your business, even more so than you have in the past, because you're going to be held responsible for their security. So that's a really important piece as far as your service providers with the safeguards rule. Okay, many of you have teams, and one of the areas where a lot of businesses have struggled historically is providing security awareness training to your team. Well, this is part of being compliant with the safeguards rule. So you're going to have to build out a security training program for your team. And I know this can feel like another thing to do, right? But this is actually one of the most important pieces that you can put into place to protect your organization. Because at the end of the day, the easiest way into your organization is through your team, right? So if you're not giving them the tools that they need to be successful, if you're not giving them the information to not click on something that they shouldn't have, it's only going to hurt you in the end. And so many times we see phishing emails that have come into organizations that are successful. And the thing that we know for sure over the last 18 months is that the attacks on organizations have escalated, and they're much better than they used to be. They look real. And so we really have to be sure that we're stepping up our game across the board as far as the training that we're providing to our team. And so you're going to have to identify if you're going to build out that training, or if you're going to use an outsourced IT provider to take care of that for your team. But it is something that's required for compliance. Another thing that is going to have to be built out for your organization is an incident response plan. As I go out and meet with customers, time and again, when we get to this piece, a lot of businesses do not have an incident response plan in place. And it's really important that you have that. And the reason why it is important is just think about it. If you wake up on a Tuesday morning and you find yourself in the middle of a cybersecurity incident, that's not when you want to figure this out, right? You want to have a well detailed and thought out incident response plan that when this happens to your organization, because at some level, at some point, something is going to happen to your organization. And you want to have this built out plan that everybody knows what they're supposed to do. Everyone knows what their role is, who they're supposed to contact, what next steps are. And if you have that built out ahead of time, you're not going to have that feeling of people running around with their hair on fire, right? So it's really important to get that built out before you need it built out, and that is part of the compliance of the safeguards, the safeguards rule. And the last piece that I wanted to make sure that you are aware of is providing a written annual report. So as we went through some of the things here that are going to be required to be in compliance for the safeguards rule, you actually have to have a written annual report. And this is going to be either provided by your designated individual, or your designated individual may outsource to an IT team that provides that for your organization. But that written security report is going to detail your compliance for the safeguards rule, right? It's going to detail any incidents you may have had, the assessments that you've had throughout the year, your pen testing, the vulnerability testing. It's going to detail that out, and security recommendations, like we talked about earlier. This is not a one and done thing. We're constantly going to be looking at our security, identifying where we can get better, where there's additional things that we need. So those are kind of the main points that I wanted to make sure that you were aware of, as far as pieces that you're going to have to get in place for the safeguards rule. So initially, the rule was to be in effect December 6th. So that meant all these companies needed to have all of these moving pieces in place by December 6th. But they found that a lot of companies were not ready. They were struggling. They were having trouble finding a qualified team to help them work through this. So they've pushed back the date on this to June 6th of this year. But specifically for accounting firms, you guys are heading straight into your busy tax season, right? And so you're going to emerge from tax season, and compliance is going to be required. So the thing that I'm going to urge you to do is don't procrastinate on this. It's very difficult as you're heading into tax season to look at something new, making changes, but there is a lot that falls into the safeguards rule, and it's not something that you're going to be able to get implemented in a month, in April, May. So I really would like to recommend that you look at this seriously now as far as what you're going to do, and identify where you might need some help. So those were the main pieces that I wanted to go over with you today. What I'm going to do is for the folks that registered for the webinar, I'm going to go ahead and send out the FTC Safeguards checklist that we put together for our clients. And if you have any questions on that, I want you to reach out to me, and you can either book a call and we can do a strategy call for your compliance, or if you just have a specific question that you need help getting answered, I want you to message me to let me know. I'm happy to help you work through some of those things. And after this call today, if there's questions that you or your team have that, hey, I'm not really sure how this is supposed to work, I invite you to send me a message directly on LinkedIn. I always get those messages pretty quickly, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you have. So again, my name is Jerry Morgan. I own Code Blue Computing right here in Denver, and we work with a lot of CPA and accounting firms. And we just put this webinar together today because we were finding a lot of folks that had questions about these new requirements. So again, if you have any questions, I'm so happy to be a resource for you. And other than that, I'm going to set you free to enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you so much.